The rain started falling just as the last prayer ended. The woman stood alone near her father's grave. Her black dress was old and simple. Her hands were shaking, but she did not move. Around her, people whispered. Some cried. Some avoided her eyes. Her own family stood a few steps away, close to each other, like she did not exist. Her father was gone, and with him everything changed. She looked at the ground, trying to stay strong. Her chest felt heavy. Her throat burned. She wanted to cry out loud, but no sound came. She had already cried too much. Now there were no tears left. A strong voice broke the silence. It's time to leave. She turned slowly. Her uncle stood there, his face cold. No sadness. No respect. Just anger. The burial is over, he said. You don't belong here anymore. The words hit her harder than the rain. She looked around, hoping someone would speak. An aunt. A cousin. Anyone. But they all looked away. Some stared at their phones. Some whispered again. She was alone. Just minutes after her father's death. As she stepped back, her hand tightened around something inside her coat pocket. A small envelope. Old. Sealed. Her father had given it to her weeks ago. Keep this safe, he had said. Do not open it yet. She did not know why, but she obeyed. Now the envelope felt heavier than before. As people began to leave, she stayed behind. The rain soaked her hair. Her shoes sank into the wet ground. Still she did not move. Her uncle walked closer. Hand over the house keys, he said. Her eyes widened. What? The house belongs to the family, he replied. Not to you. But my father. Your father is dead, he cut her off. And you have no right here. Those words broke something inside her. Her father had worked his whole life. He protected her when others treated her like nothing. He believed in her when no one else did. And now they were erasing her. Slowly, she pulled the keys from her pocket. Her hands trembled as she placed them in her uncle's palm. No one stopped it. No one said it was wrong. A young boy, her cousin, took a step forward. His lips moved, trying to speak. Enough, an aunt snapped, pulling him back. Stay quiet. The woman saw fear in the child's eyes. She said nothing. Silence became her shield. As the family walked toward their cars, laughter suddenly broke out. Soft at first, then louder. Someone made a joke about dinner plans. Dinner. On the day her father was buried. She stood there, soaked and shaking as they drove away. When the last car disappeared, the woman finally turned toward the grave. I'm still here, she whispered. A memory flashed in her mind. Her father sitting at the small kitchen table late at night. Papers spread out. His face tired but calm. When he noticed her watching, he smiled. Some people only show their true face after death, he had said quietly. She never understood those words. Until today. The rain slowed. The cemetery became empty. She walked toward the gate with no place to go. At the edge of the road, she stopped and pulled out the envelope. Her fingers traced her father's handwriting on the front. Her name. Nothing else. She wanted to open it, but fear stopped her. What if it changed everything? What if it changed nothing? She slipped it back into her pocket and started walking. Cold. Hungry. Homeless. As night fell, she reached the house she once called home. Lights were on inside. Shadows moved behind the curtains. Laughter again. She did not knock. She turned away. At the corner of the street, she sat down on a bench. Her body shook from the cold, but her face stayed calm. People passed by, not noticing her. A stranger stopped for a moment, looked at her, then walked away. She closed her eyes. Another memory came. Her father holding her hand when she was young. No matter what happens, he said, never beg people who enjoy your pain. She opened her eyes. Her jaw tightened. She would not beg. Above her, the sky cleared for a moment. The moon appeared, quiet and distant. Her fingers touched the envelope again. Inside it was something her family did not know about. Something her father had planned. Something that would change the story. But for now she stayed silent. Because sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous to ignore. The night was cold and quiet. The woman slept sitting on a hard wooden bench near the empty road. Her coat was thin. The rain had stopped, but the cold stayed. Every sound made her open her eyes. A passing car. A dog barking far away. The world felt unsafe now. She had no home. When morning came, her body ached. Her stomach hurt with hunger. She had not eaten since the day before. Slowly she stood up and looked around. People walked past her on their way to work. No one stopped. No one asked. She did not blame them. She walked toward the old bakery at the corner. The smell of bread filled the air. Her mouth watered, but she kept walking. She had no money. Begging was not an option. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Never beg people who enjoy your pain. She reached a small park and sat under a tree. Her hands shook as she pulled out the envelope again. She stared at it for a long time. Why did her father trust this to her? Why now? She thought about opening it, but fear held her back. If she opened it, there would be no turning back. So she placed it safely inside her bag and stood up again. She needed work. She walked from shop to shop. A cafe. A small store. A cleaning service. Each time, the answer was the same. Sorry, we are not hiring. Some did not even look at her. By noon, her legs felt weak. She sat on the steps of a closed building and rested her head against the wall. Tears finally came, but she wiped them quickly. She would not break. Across town, her family gathered inside the house that once belonged to her father. The living room was full. Food covered the table. Laughter filled the air. She left without a fight, one aunt said. I knew she was weak. Her uncle smirked. She had nothing anyway. But then something strange happened. The uncle noticed a folder missing from the study. He searched again. Drawers. Shelves. Nothing. His smile faded. Where are the papers? He asked sharply. The room went quiet. What papers? Someone asked. The ones your brother kept locked away, he replied. A small wave of fear passed through the room. Back at the park, the woman felt eyes on her. A man stood nearby, watching her. She tensed, ready to move. But he only placed a small bag next to her and walked away. Inside were a sandwich and a bottle of water. Her hands shook as she held them. Thank you, she whispered, though he was already gone. It was the first kindness she had felt since her father's death. As she ate, strength slowly returned to her body. Her mind cleared. She remembered something else her father had said. If they push you out, it means you were never small. That afternoon, she found a cheap room to rent. Old walls. One small window. A thin mattress. But it was safe. That night, she finally opened the envelope. Inside were copies of documents and a short handwritten note. My daughter, if you are reading this, it means they showed you who they really are. Do not fear. Everything I protected is now in your hands. Trust yourself. Stay quiet. The truth will come at the right time. Her heart pounded. She did not fully understand the papers, but she knew one thing. Her father had planned ahead. The next morning, her family began to worry. Phone calls were made. Questions were asked. But the woman did not answer. She had disappeared. And that scared them. She spent the day reading and learning. She asked questions. She listened more than she spoke. With every hour, her fear slowly turned into calm. Across town, her uncle slammed his fist on the table. She knows something, he said. Meanwhile, the woman stood by her small window, looking at the city lights. She was still alone, still hurt, but she was no longer lost. She whispered to herself, I'm ready, because silence was no longer her weakness. It was her power. The woman woke before sunrise. The small room was silent. The city outside had not started moving yet. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memory returned. The funeral. The rain. The keys in her uncle's hand. She sat up slowly. Today, she would not run. She washed her face with cold water and looked at herself in the cracked mirror. Her eyes were tired, but steady. No tears. No fear. Only focus. She placed the envelope and papers into her bag and left the room. Across town, her family was not calm. The uncle paced the living room. His phone buzzed again. Another missed call. Another unanswered message. She should have shown up by now, an aunt said nervously. People are asking questions. Let them ask, he snapped. She has nothing. But his voice was not strong. Something was wrong. Back on the street, the woman walked into a small office building. The sign on the door read, Legal Records and Public Files. She paused, took a breath, and stepped inside. An older woman behind the desk looked up. Can I help you? Yes, she said calmly. I need to check some records. The clerk nodded. Name. She gave her father's name. The clerk's eyebrows lifted slightly but said nothing. She typed, clicked, and frowned. These records are unusual, the clerk said slowly. The woman felt her heart race, but her face stayed calm. What do you mean? There are documents filed months ago, the clerk replied. Some are sealed. Some are protected. The woman swallowed. Her father had not just prepared. He had protected her. While papers were being printed, voices outside the office caught her attention. Two women stood near the door, whispering. That's her, one said quietly. She was kicked out after the funeral, the other replied. They say she was greedy. The woman looked down, pretending not to hear. But every word burned. Lies traveled faster than truth. She left the office with copies in her bag and walked into the bright daylight. She did not stop. She did not look back. At the house, tension filled the air. A cousin returned from town, face pale. People are talking, he said. They say lawyers are asking questions. The uncle froze. About what? About uncle's accounts. His files. Everything. The room went silent. For the first time, fear replaced confidence. Meanwhile, the woman sat in a quiet cafe. She ordered the cheapest coffee and read the papers again. Some words were hard to understand, but the meaning was clear. Her father had moved assets. He had signed control papers. He had named her as the final decision maker. Not owner. Protector. She remembered nights when he stayed up late, his face tired but peaceful. She thought he was just working. He was building a shield. Her phone vibrated. An unknown number. She stared at it, then let it stop. Silence was still her weapon. That afternoon, she visited a community center. She asked for advice. She listened. She learned who to trust and who to avoid. A man there said quietly, "You don't look like someone who lost everything." She met his eyes. "I didn't." Across town, her family argued. "You said she was weak," an aunt shouted. "She is hiding something," the uncle replied. "She always was." Anger filled the house, but beneath it was fear. They had pushed her away too fast. They had not checked what she carried with her. As evening came, the woman stood outside the old house. She did not go inside. She only looked at it from across the street. This was the place where she grew up, where she learned to stay quiet, where she learned to survive. A car passed slowly. Someone inside watched her. She felt it, but she did not move. She turned and walked away again. That night, she returned to her small room and locked the door. She placed the papers neatly on the table. For the first time, she allowed herself to smile. Not a happy smile. A knowing one. Her father had trusted her for a reason. And soon everyone would understand why. But not yet. Not until the right moment. She turned off the light and whispered into the dark, "I'm not done." Because the quiet woman they pushed away was becoming the one they should have feared. The woman sat on the edge of her thin mattress, staring at the papers spread across the small table. Sunlight came through the window, but it brought no warmth. Every page held her father's quiet voice, his careful planning, his warning without fear. She touched the top paper gently. Her name was there. Not as an owner. Not as a victim. As the one in control. She closed her eyes. Now she understood why he told her to stay silent. Across town, the house was no longer peaceful. The uncle stood in the study sweating. Papers were spread everywhere, drawers pulled out, cabinets left open. The calm confidence he once had was gone. "They are asking questions," he said through his teeth. "People from offices. From banks." An aunt crossed her arms. "You said everything was handled." "It was," he snapped. "Or at least I thought it was." A cousin whispered, "What if she knows?" The room froze. "No," the uncle said quickly. "She is nothing. She always depended on us." But his hands were shaking. Back in her room, the woman stood up and placed the documents back into her bag. Today, she would take a step forward. Not to attack. Not to explain. To confirm. She walked to a quiet building with glass doors and a simple sign. Inside, the air felt cold and serious. She spoke little. She listened carefully. An older man reviewed the documents in silence. After a long moment, he looked up. Your father was very careful, he said. He protected you from many things. Her chest tightened. From what? From people who smile while taking, he replied. She nodded slowly. So what happens now? She asked. That depends on you, he said. You can act now. Or you can wait. She thought of the funeral. The rain. The keys in her uncle's hand. I will wait, she said. The man studied her face. Then he nodded. Smart choice. Outside, the world moved like normal. Cars passed. People laughed. No one knew a storm was building. At the house, the family argued again. She has not called, an aunt said. What if she goes to the police? She won't, the uncle replied. She's scared. But his voice cracked. Later that day, the woman walked past the house again. She did not stop. She did not look inside. But someone was watching from the window. A young cousin saw her and froze. She's here, he whispered. The uncle rushed to the window, but she was already gone. That night, the woman sat alone in her room. She held her father's old watch in her hand. It had stopped working years ago, but he never fixed it. Time is not always about moving, he once said. Sometimes it waits. She placed the watch beside the papers. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We need to talk. She stared at the screen. Then another message came. You don't know what you're doing. Her lips tightened. She typed one sentence. You don't know what I know. Then she turned off the phone. Across town, panic spread. Did you message her? An aunt asked. Yes, the uncle said. She replied. What did she say? He did not answer. For the first time, the family felt powerless. Days passed. The woman stayed quiet. She worked small jobs. She kept learning. She watched carefully. And the family began to fall apart. Bank visits. Calls returned unanswered. Whispers behind closed doors. One night, the uncle sat alone in the dark living room. The house felt empty, even with people inside. He remembered her as a child. Quiet. Observing. Always listening. He had mistaken silence for weakness. Back in her room, the woman stood by the window again. The city lights looked different now. Less threatening. Less cold. She whispered softly, "Thank you, Dad." She was not ready to reveal the truth yet. But when she did, it would not be loud. It would be final. Because what her father left behind was not just papers. It was power. And she was ready to use it. The first knock came early in the morning. The woman was awake already. She had learned to wake before fear could reach her. She stood still, listening. The knock came again. Slower. Careful. She did not open the door. A voice followed, low and unsure. "It's me." She recognized it. Her cousin. "Please," he said. "Just talk to me." She waited a few seconds, then unlocked the door but did not step back. She stayed in the doorway, calm and guarded. "What do you want?" she asked. He looked tired. Nervous. Nothing like the confident boy who once laughed at her silence. "They're scared," he said. She said nothing. "They didn't expect this," he continued. "The calls. The letters. The visits." "Neither did I," she replied quietly. He looked down. "They think you're planning something." She met his eyes. "I already did." He swallowed. "They want you to come home." For the first time, she almost smiled. "That house is not my home," she said. "It never was." She closed the door gently. Across town, panic ruled the house. The uncle paced from room to room. His phone lay useless in his hand. No one answered his calls anymore. Not the bank. Not old friends. Not the people who once smiled at him. An aunt sat at the table, shaking. "This is your fault," she whispered. "You pushed her too hard." She had nothing, he shouted. Nothing. But the truth was now clear. She had everything they feared. Later that day, the woman walked into a small meeting room downtown. Two people waited inside. Calm. Professional. They spoke softly, But their words were heavy. Some transfers are frozen, one said. Questions are being asked. Good, the woman replied. They exchanged a glance. You understand this may cause conflict, the other said. I already lived with conflict, she answered. This just changes who controls it. As she left the building, the sun felt warmer than before. She breathed deeply. She was no longer reacting. She was deciding. That evening, the family tried a different move. An aunt showed up at her workplace. Tears filled her eyes. Her voice shook. We are family, she cried. We made mistakes. People nearby stopped and stared. The woman remained calm. You made choices, she said softly. So did I. The aunt reached for her hand. Your father would not want this. The woman gently pulled her hand back. My father taught me to protect myself, she replied. That is what I am doing. She walked away as whispers followed her. That night, the uncle finally broke. He sat alone in the study, surrounded by the things he thought he owned. He opened a drawer and found an old photo. Her father stood beside the woman as a child, his hand on her shoulder. He remembered how quiet she always was, how he never bothered to listen. He understood too late. Meanwhile, the woman sat in her room, writing a short list. Names, dates, moments she remembered, but never questioned before. Everything connected now. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. We can fix this. Let's meet. She stared at the screen for a long time. Then she replied. Tomorrow. Public place. Across town, relief filled the house. She agreed, someone said. The uncle smiled for the first time in days. Good. We'll talk sense into her. But his smile did not last. Because the woman was not coming to beg. She was coming to end something. The next morning, she dressed simply. Calm colors. Steady hands. She placed the papers into her bag, not to show them, but to feel their weight. At the cafe, the family waited. She walked in alone. Every conversation stopped. She sat across from them and looked at each face. Faces that once ignored her pain. Faces that now watched her carefully. You look well, an aunt said nervously. I am, she replied. The uncle leaned forward. We should forget the past. She tilted her head slightly. The past is the reason we're here. Silence fell. She stood up. This meeting is not for peace, she said calmly. It's for truth. Their faces changed. Fear replaced hope. She turned and walked out before they could speak. Because some endings do not need loud words. They need quiet certainty. And as she stepped into the sunlight, she knew the next move would not be hers alone. The truth was ready to speak. The cafe felt smaller than before. The family sat in silence after the woman walked out. Cups of coffee cooled on the table untouched. No one spoke. The uncle stared at the empty chair where she had been sitting, his face tight with anger and fear. She thinks she's strong now, he muttered. We will handle this. But his words sounded weak. Outside, the woman walked slowly down the street. Her heart beat fast, but her steps were steady. She had said what she needed to say. Not everything, but enough. The next move would not be loud. It would be official. That afternoon, letters arrived at the house. Not friendly letters. Serious ones. The uncle opened the first envelope with shaking hands. His eyes moved quickly across the page. His face drained of color. What is it? An aunt asked. He did not answer. Another letter was opened. Then another. Each one carried the same message. Reviews. Freezes. Investigations. This can't be happening, the aunt whispered. It is, the uncle said quietly. Across town, the woman sat in a small office again. This time she was not nervous. She listened as a calm voice explained what would happen next. Everything will be reviewed, the man said. Nothing will move without your approval. She nodded. I understand. Your father trusted you for a reason, he added. She thought of her father's tired smile, his quiet strength, the way he watched people without speaking. Yes, she said softly. He did. That evening, the woman visited the cemetery alone. The sky was clear. No rain. No wind. Just silence. She stood before her father's grave and took a deep breath. They are afraid now, she said quietly. Just like you said they would be. She placed the old watch on the stone. I'm not angry, she continued. I'm just done being invisible. As she turned to leave, she felt lighter. Not happy, but free. Back at the house, fear turned into blame. This is your fault, an aunt shouted at the uncle. You pushed her out. She would have done this anyway, he replied. She was always watching. Another cousin spoke up. We never treated her right. Silence followed. Truth has a way of stopping arguments. Late that night, the uncle tried calling her again. No answer. He sent messages. No reply. He stared at his phone, then threw it on the couch. She thinks she's won, he said. But deep down he knew this was not about winning. It was about control. The next day, news spread quietly through the town. Not loud headlines. Just whispers. People who once avoided the woman now looked at her with respect. Some looked with regret. At her small job, a coworker said, You seem different. She smiled slightly. I am. The coworker nodded. Good different. That night, the woman sat at her table organizing papers. Each document told a story of protection, of planning, of patience. Her phone buzzed again. A new message. We are willing to apologize. She read it once, then deleted it. An apology that comes from fear is not an apology. Across town, the house felt empty even though people filled it. The uncle sat alone again, staring at the walls. Everything he thought was safe was now fragile. He remembered the funeral. How she stood in the rain. How she said nothing. He finally understood. Silence was never weakness. It was warning. The woman turned off the light and lay down on her bed. For the first time in weeks, she slept without fear. But she knew the story was not over. Because the truth was now moving on its own. And once the truth begins to move, it cannot be stopped. Some doors were about to close forever. Others were about to open. And the family that once turned on her would soon face what they tried to bury. The truth did not arrive loudly. It came quietly, the same way her father had lived. The woman stood outside the courthouse early in the morning. The building was calm, almost empty. She held her bag close, not because she was afraid, but because it carried the final pieces of her father's story. Inside, her family waited. They sat on hard benches, dressed carefully, trying to look calm. But fear showed in their eyes. The uncle avoided looking at anyone. The aunts whispered prayers under their breath. They did not notice her at first. She entered without sound and took a seat behind them. When her name was called, every head turned. The woman stood up slowly. No tears. No anger. Only quiet strength. As documents were reviewed, the room filled with soft voices and turning pages. Each page explained what her father had done. How he moved control away from people he no longer trusted. How he protected what mattered most. Her. The uncle shifted in his seat. His face grew pale. This is not right, he whispered. But no one listened. The woman spoke only once. My father knew this day would come, she said calmly. He asked me to stay quiet until the truth could speak for itself. The room fell silent. Her father's note was read out loud. His words were simple. Clear. If you are hearing this, it means my daughter was pushed aside. She is not weak. She is careful. Trust her. An aunt covered her mouth. A cousin lowered his head in shame. The uncle clenched his fists. Outside, after everything was done, the family surrounded her. You planned this, the uncle said, his voice shaking. No, she replied. He did. An aunt stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Why didn't you say anything? The woman looked at her quietly. Because you never listened, she answered. That afternoon, the truth spread further. Not as gossip, but as understanding. People who once believed the lies now saw them clearly. The woman walked through town, feeling eyes on her. Not judging eyes. Respectful ones. That evening, she returned to the house one last time. She stood at the door and looked inside. Memories filled the space. Good ones. Bad ones. Her uncle stood in the living room. I never thought you could do this, he said. She met his eyes. You never thought I mattered. He had no answer. She placed the keys on the table. I don't want this house, she said. I want peace. She turned to leave. Wait, he said softly. She paused. I'm sorry, he whispered. She nodded once. Not in forgiveness. Not in anger. In closure. Outside, the sky was orange with sunset. The woman took a deep breath. The past felt lighter now. That night, she sat in her room and opened her father's last note again. You don't need to fight to be strong. You just need to stand when others fall. Tears finally came. Not from pain. From release. But the story was not finished. One last truth remained. Something even the family did not know. And it was about to change everything. The woman did not rush the ending. She knew endings should be slow, clear, and honest. The morning after the courthouse day, she woke up before sunrise. Light touched the small window of her room. For the first time in a long while, she felt calm. Not relief. Not joy. Just calm. She made tea and sat quietly, holding her father's old watch. The hands were still. Time had stopped inside it, but her life had not. Her phone rang. She looked at the name and hesitated. Then she answered. I found something, the voice said. Something your father asked me to give you only after everything was settled. Her heart beat faster. Where? At the old workshop, the voice replied. Come alone. The workshop stood at the edge of town. Dust covered the windows. The place smelled of wood and oil, just like when her father used to work there late at night. Inside, an older man waited. He was her father's friend. Quiet. Honest. He trusted you, the man said, handing her a small metal box. More than anyone. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single letter and a small key. She opened the letter slowly. My daughter, if you are reading this, then you survived what I feared most. This key opens a safe that no one else knows about. What is inside is not money. It is truth. Her breath caught. The man led her to a hidden wall panel. Behind it was a small safe. She inserted the key. The door opened. Inside were old records, photos, and one document on top. She picked it up. Her eyes widened. It was proof. Proof that the family had planned to push her out long before her father died. Proof that they tried to take control even while he was still alive. Proof that he knew. And proof that he had chosen her anyway. Tears filled her eyes. Not from pain. From understanding. Her father did not just protect her future. He trusted her with the truth. That evening, she returned to the house one last time. Not to argue. Not to accuse. She gathered the family in the living room. They looked tired. Broken. Smaller than before. I came to say goodbye, she said calmly. The uncle looked up. Isn't that what you wanted from the start? She shook her head. No. I wanted honesty. She placed the documents on the table. These show what you planned, she continued. Before the funeral. Before the rain. The room went silent. An aunt began to cry. The uncle stared at the papers, unable to speak. I won't expose you, the woman said. Not because you deserve mercy, but because I deserve peace. She picked up her bag. This ends today. She turned toward the door. Wait, the uncle said, his voice low. What do you want? She stopped, but did not turn around. I want nothing from you, she said. That is my freedom. She walked out. Outside, the night air felt light. Clean. She moved to a new place soon after. A small home. Quiet street. Fresh start. She worked. She helped others quietly. She lived without fear. People who once ignored her now spoke her name with respect. Not because of power, but because of dignity. One evening, she stood by her window and looked at the sky. She whispered, I did it, Dad. In her mind, she heard his voice. I always knew you would. She placed the old watch on the table beside a photo of him. It still did not tick. But it did not need to. Time had done its job. The family never spoke of her again. But they remembered. Because silence, when filled with truth, is louder than any scream. And the woman who once cried alone in the rain became the one no one could ever erase again. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Silent Family Tears for more powerful stories about pain, strength, and quiet victories.